Believing that farmers are situated to be the best conservationist of all, one Canon County cattleman has adopted the New Zealand style of raising stock on the farm he worked with his father. Raymond Cooper now travels the country teaching this approach of growing and rotating healthy pastures to raise healthy cattle. We dropped in to hear about this grassroots movement with No Hay Ray.
I'm Raymond Cooper, and you're welcome to Cooper Farm. This farm is located in the southeast of Canon County, near the Coffee and Warren County line. It's all on the Highland Rim. It is a century farm. I'm the fourth generation to operate this, and the last 3 years my son Andrew's moved back out here, and he's operating part of it now. You can probably tell from the dairy cows in the background that we're transitioning part of the farm over to a grass-based dairy. And we're essentially using the New Zealand model, where it's for limited feeding and mostly cattle on pasture and rotational grazing. And my goal is to produce a calf as cheaply as I can, that I can take it to the feeder calf sale and it will grade choice and bring a good price, or retain ownership through the feedlot. Late 70s and 80s, I had a round baler and a disc mower, and I put up 500 to 700 rolls of hay a year, and made sure I fed it every bit, because stored outside it wouldn't last to the second year. And I was at a grazing conference, and I think it was in Jackson, Mississippi in the mid-80s, and a guy named Jim Garish that worked for the University of Missouri said that he was wintering cows on strictly stockpile grass with no hay, and that you could cut your cow herd in half if you didn't feed hay and make more money. Well, I came home and towards that idea and made a trip up to, it's the Forage Research Center in Linneus, Missouri. Jim is no longer there. He retired a few years ago. And they were actually wintering dry cows through the winter by strip grazing with this polywire. You know, I've raised cattle my whole life, and I was amazed at how you could stretch your feed and how well the cattle did on it. And I guess I just gradually, as I could afford to, I knew I had to re-fence with electric fence in order to make this work. And I knew I had to do something about my water resources. But you can't do everything at once out of retained profits, because some years there's not much profit, and then some there is. And so I gradually started implementing this plan, but it took me about 10 or 12 years to where I think I put up my last hay in 2000. It was either 99 or 2000. I put up 78 rolls, and it stayed in the hay barn till it almost rotted. This is a 2-strand high tensile fence. And this is what most of my interior fences are. Some of them are 1-strand. This is a PowerFlex post made out of recycled wood and polypropylene. And what I like about it, you can't short out on these steel posts. The insulator gets knocked out, it can short out your fence, but this is insulator, and these things are real flexible. The biggest problem we have with these interior fences is deer knocking the fence off of the insulators. But this is wildlife friendly, human friendly. If a deer hits it, it gives and just bounces back. Can give every way. And I really like these. I've only been using them about 3 years, but I'm gradually shifting my interior fences over to this type post. This is a paddock that was laid out yesterday on this side. You can tell from the difference in grass. They're about ready for a paddock shift late this evening. And you can see the next paddock already laid out. We'll just take this one down, let the cows over there. But this time of year, we will have, in a couple of days, to back fence this, or they'll come back and re-graze it. Where in the winter, when you're grazing stockpile, that's not a problem. This is an example of the reels we use to wind this up. It's a geared reel. You can unhook it at the far end and just stand here and reel it all up. I normally ride my 4-wheeler when I'm unrolling it, but this is a very flexible fence. I just normally use these tread-end posts. When I take this up, I'll unhook this end, ride my 4-wheeler down, pick these posts up, stand there and reel it up. But these are light, easy to use posts, and you just set them down about every 50, 60 feet, just step them in the ground, and off you go. And once your cattle are trained, it's no problem. I'll take this one down and then move it beyond that next fence. But One of the things I've really emphasized the last 3 or 4 years in this rotational grazing is keeping a high legume component in my fields. It's pretty important holding your fertilizer price down to try to get some free nitrogen out of these legumes. The legumes mitigate part of the problems with the fungus and the fescue. They improve the animal performance a little bit, and they sure cut down on the nitrogen fertilizer bill. A cow excretes about 90% through urine or feces is what she takes in, and only about 10% goes to meat or milk. And if you can get that 90% back out on your grass, it's a wonderful environmental tool, and also it's a wonderful economic tool. But you're leaving the manure paddocks behind where the fly larvae hatch out, and you're continually moving to fresh ground, and it does cut down on the parasite worms and fly problems, I think, dramatically. You know, there's a lot of parts of the economy that's going away that won't be back. Agriculture is not going away. It's constantly in a state of change, but it's not going away. People are going to have to eat. But what we're doing is very, very close to organic here, very close. Many of these fields have not had commercial fertilizer applied for 6 or 8 years. I try to soil test about every 3 years. But when you're not applying much nitrogen fertilizer, and when you're getting all your manure, or a high percentage of manure recycle, you know, your soil tests just don't change that much. These terraces in this field were built in 53 or 54 to stop erosion. This field was pretty much when my dad bought this farm in 53. There was deep gullies, and most of the topsoil had done washed away here. And we went in and used a little small tractor to make the basic outline, and then used mules and a pond scoop to fill in the low areas. And it took us all summer to build these terraces. These terraces, probably the way I'm managing it now, aren't necessary for erosion control, but I guess I'm leaving them more as a monument to my dad and what he thought about conservation than anything. Through the row of trees you see up and down is a spring-fed creek called Cooper Branch. It's actually at part of the headwaters of the Caney Fork River. I work with Brad Bingham out of the Cookeville Fish and Wildlife office doing a stream exclusion project here. He gave me the technical support, and also they did some cost sharing. And what we did essentially was fence off the creek and some drainage areas on either side, some sediment areas, and we installed a total of 8 at that time of these Richie pressurized waters scattered around over the farm. What was unique about this creek is there's several endangered species of minnows that seem to only reproduce in these spring-fed creeks. And a lot of people are conservationists at heart, but they don't have any place to put it into practice. Where farmers own enough of the natural resources, they can put these things into practice. And I think, you know, farmers are the top conservationists, in my opinion. You ask about why more people don't adapt rotational grazing. I'm convinced that some people had rather fail conventionally than to try something unconventional. One thing, they can't stand the peer pressure from their neighbors when you try something new. I first experienced this when we started no-tilling. We were the first people in the county to no-till, and every neighbor I had hoped it didn't work because they knew they'd have to change their way of farming if it did work. And so that really never bothered me, but it bothers a lot of people. They're just not going to do it different than the way they've always done it, or the way their neighbors do it. They're just not going to step out and be pioneers.